Hello, this is Tom Little, but I answer to three other names: Dad, Uncle Tom, and Granddad. I want to thank my daughter for helping me record my story. I want to dedicate this story to my son Charles, my daughter Elizabeth, and my nieces Carol, Kathy, and Pat, as well as to my grandkids Emily, Charles, and Katie. I know you have heard a little bit about Charles and me, the time we were growing up in New Matamoras. Much of my story may seem untrue. If Charles were here today, he would tell you that everything is the way it happened. He would also laugh at many of the dumb things we did. When we were seniors at Lehman High School in Canton, Ohio, Miss Willett, our English teacher, asked the class to write an essay on our childhood. Charles started his essay to describe our childhood. I would say we lived a Tom Sawyer existence. What a descriptive way to put it. Charles, my identical twin brother, and I were born in a small town, New Matamoras, Ohio, right on the Ohio River on a very cold February 19, 1924. I was born first on the steps just outside our house, and Charles was born 15 minutes in the comforts of a bed. Dad didn't see us until May due to his work drilling oil wells in the hills of West Virginia. We grew up in a loving family with a sister, Helen, Mom, and Dad, and all four of our grandparents close by. We also had aunts and uncles and cousins and a lot of friends, and of course, being a twin, always had a best friend. During the Great Depression, our family was poor, however, we never knew it. The three of us, Charles and I, came home from school each day for lunch. We only had beans or soup, yet we always had enough to share with 3 or 4 other kids. We may have been poor, but it was only money. We had plenty to eat because Mom grew up vegetable garden and we had a grape arbor. Mom canned the vegetables and made grape jelly. We also picked blackberries every year, and she made blackberry jelly. New Matamoras was located between Ohio River and the hills. On top of the hill was a cemetery, which everyone called the Hill. We had gas lights, boardwalks, hitching posts, and some brick streets. Boardwalks were sidewalks made out of boards. They lined only the largest streets, like main streets. We had a wharf boat. All the river boats docked at the wharf boat to unload the needs of our town. Things like grocery, hardware, and soft goods. Lon Sutton, my great-uncle, Grandfather Sutton's brother, and my mother's uncle, was the caretaker. Charles and I visited Uncle Lon often. One day when Charles and I were playing on the wharf boat, there was a guy that threw us off the boat into the river. This was fine, except we could not swim, so we learned to swim at that very moment. There's an event that I remember very well. That was a reunion of sorts of the Littles and Behrens, Uncle Clarence and Aunt Granddad Little, and the Behrens twins, Aunt Nora and Grandma, and their families. This was held at the Behrens homestead, which was about a half a mile beyond the Yellow House. Uncle Clarence and Aunt Nora were there with their 2 daughters, Jessie and Betty. Harris Little was absent. Granddad Little and Grandma Little were there with their daughter Mary and their son Ralph and his wife Maureen with her 3 children, Helen and the twins Charles and Tom. I remember had plenty of food to eat, and we had a great time. One day the riverboat delivered to the twins baseball uniforms. The uniform had the pinstripes of the New York Yankees. We were so very proud. However, something was missing. There was only 1 pair of stockings for 2 boys. Mom had the wisdom of Solomon, told us what we must do. One day Charles would wear the stockings, and then next day Tom wore the stockings, and so forth. For a few years Charles and I played at home. We had a large backyard. We lived in Front Street, and the property went back to 2nd Street. Near the rear of the property was an outhouse. We did not have running water, inside toilets, or telephone. From our house back to the outhouse was a grape arbor. It was a large and ran on either side of the boardwalk from the house to near the end of the property. When the grapes season came, we had grapes on each side as well on the top. As we got to be around 5 or 6, Dad felt the need to place a fence around our backyard to keep us in. It was a picket fence, which later helped whitewash. As Dad was nailing in the last nail in the last picket, he looked up and saw both of us escaping over the fence. From that day on, our playground was our town. To set the record straight, if you're thinking that our parents, your grandparents, were not caring, nothing could be further from the truth. If it would be possible to choose a parent from anywhere in the world, we would have chosen the ones that God gave us. Our dad worked in an oil wells, miles from home. It was a miracle that he was able to get there. He had to go by boat, train, horse and buggy, and then walk. When he got to the place where he roomed and boarded, he would work his 12 hours on and then 12 hours off. And this would last for 3 or 4 months before he came home again. There were no phones, and the mail was very slow. Coming by train, boat, and horse and buggy. When he was home, he was our dad in every sense of the word. As for Mom, she cleaned our house as well as Grandma and Granddad Little's home. Let me tell you what it was like. In the 20s and 30s, she swept her house with a broom. She washed her clothes by hand in a galvanized tub with a scrub board and hung out the clothes on line to dry. She pressed her clothes with an iron heated in the kitchen stove. She gave us a bath every Saturday night in a large galvanized tub, and the water was heated on the stove. Charles and I bathed together. Mom had no refrigerator, just an icebox. The icebox was square, wood box, lined in metal. The ice came in 25, 50, and 75 pounds of blocks and was loaded into the top. As for the toilet, we would go to the outhouse, and the Sears and Roebuck catalog provided the toilet paper. When Charles and I were 5 or 6, Mom walked a mile or so over a gravel road to have Mrs. Sisson make Charles and I a suit from one of my granddad Littles. He had nice suits, the best available. He was an independent contractor who drilled oil wells for companies such as Ashton Oil. Several people worked for him. From one suit, Mrs. Sisson made 2 pairs of knickers, 2 vests, and 2 jackets. We only wore our suits on Sundays. The rest of the time we wore blue overalls to school and to play in. When it was warm, we wore the overalls without a shirt or shoes. I remember Mom being president of the PTA. I think this is one of the reasons we had other kids eating lunch with us every day. There were 3 grades in our school. The school was a brick building. There were not many kids in our class. Our teachers were not much older than us and not much better educated. For example, one teacher pronounced Arkansas, Arkansas. It seems Mom's system for calling us, Helen, Charles, and Tom, was one used in the jungle when a drum beat carried from the village. When she called us, if we did not hear her, someone would eventually tell us, "Your mother is looking for you."